He has as many Emmys as days in the week. I can't wait for that second week of Emmys to come through. It's Jason Wormser, who is on Twitter at worm_66, formerly of ESPN, Fox Sports, NFL Media, now Normal Communications. Is that how you pronounce it? Or is it?
Yes, it is Normal Communications.
Normal. Okay. I love it.
It's taking my mom and my pop's names.
I love it.
And merging together. It's actually my mom's full name is in there, and my dad's hyphenated. Well, half of his name is in there. So why I did it.
A dedication and ode to them. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio, and this will be an opportunity to feature Jason, look at some of the big things he's covered over his career, tell some stories, inspire some people along the way. And I have to start with this, Jason. Who patented the nickname The Worm first? Was it you or was it Dennis Rodman?
That would be me. Although, when did he make his debut? What was he? It was about the same time, but I was known as the Worm in college. So that goes back, I think, pre Pistons for him, if I can remember that far back.
You have a podcast called the Wormcast, I should say.
It is the Wormcast, yes.
Wormcast. I encourage everybody to check that out. A lot of neat guests from Rob Stone to Mike Del Tufo. I was actually just listening to that episode, and I learned from you. Are we at 17 Super Bowls for you so far in your career, in your life? Is that where you are as far as counting them up?
17, but I haven't been to one in quite a while. So I worked a bunch of them. I was fortunate enough to be a fan at a bunch of them. But if my team's not in it anymore, I'm just not going. I will say this. I was there in Miami 2 years ago, but I didn't go to the game. I just was down there for the week, saw some people, trying to reconnect with some folks. I'm from South Florida. So it was a Miami game, and it was a fun week down there. It was a really good week down there, but I drove back Saturday afternoon to where I was outside of Tampa in Dunedin, the home of the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays in the spring, and for part of the season.
Yeah, and I saw that, was it last year that you went to some Blue Jays spring training games in March, right before things got shut down?
Yes.
And then, if I'm not mistaken as well, the New York Giants are your team, right? That is
yes.
your pride and joy. So
there's reasons why I'm bald. They are one of two reasons. And it's actually one of three.
Okay.
The third one is hereditary, but they are number one and 1A. And then Tottenham Hotspur makes me bald too, as well. They're number two.
What's the most hair pulling, just nerve wracking, if you will, balding moment where you operated under a deadline that you pulled off something special and you just don't know how you did it? It just came together on live television.
Well, I would say I'd have to go back. If you go back before the Winter Olympics in 1998, I'm at Fox Sports. I'm a feature producer, jack of all trades, master of none. And they made a deal with Tanya Harding and her camp, along with, I'm blanking on the most famous ice skating rivalry in the history of ice skating. They made a deal.
Okay.
They made a deal. Maybe you'll look it up and you'll edit this out, and I'll start over.
Totally.
Why am I blanking out? Because
I'm going to help you out.
I did the Tanya Nancy Kerrigan.
Oh, of course.
So,
yeah.
Let me start over. Let's start over. So 1998, I'm at Fox Sports. I'm a feature producer, and they decided to make a deal before the Winter Olympics. So this is the first Winter Olympics since the nonsense in Detroit, later on Lillehammer. So they made a deal with Nancy Kerrigan's team and Tanya Harding's team to do a special, 4 years later special. I spent about a month and a half working on a feature about the incident. And I had to go back, and I have them somewhere, these manila folders where I made these timelines, and there were like 4 of them spread across my desk. Everything that happened, who where, what. I ended up interviewing Jeff Gillooly on my own in Portland in December of 97. And I spent 3 days up there and we interviewed him for, this was like 60 minutes stuff. Like he wasn't leaving the chair. We got up for water or whatever, but I think I interviewed him for about 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
I interviewed the, I forgot the county that Portland's in, the district attorney in Portland, Oregon, who investigated him. I did stand-ups with Pam Oliver. We did this whole thing about the entire incident. We ended up interviewing Nancy, James Brown and I ended up doing, Tanya for that piece as well. Well, anyway, there's all this stuff moving around. I must have spent 24 hours editing that with with some great editors at Fox. And there was 2 shifts of them. There were so many, like my original editor, he was in for 8 hours. The next editor came in and then he came back in later to finish up with me. And I remember having to deliver the piece by hand because we were mixing the show that weekend before it hit air in Hollywood at a separate studio. And I literally had an hour of sleep. I got back and I had to drive from my home in Marina Del Rey into Hollywood. And I almost ran off the road. I mean, I literally couldn't see straight. And was it awesome and terrific? It was 14 minutes. It was a long piece, but it was good. And that was one of many crazy editing times and editing moments, deadline types of things. But there's also the deadline that year was the year of McGuire and Sosa and that whole chase. And we were there. I remember we got both of them to sit down with Joe Buck the night of the 62nd home run. It was Labor Day night in 1998. We got them both, sat down before batting practice. But we didn't have an editing system. It was strictly tape to tape.
Oh, yes.
I think we did it through Elvis, but it wasn't what they have now, say at the US Open, what they're going to have next week, or at any major live big event. Although when there's tier 1 event, where there's a separate unit that does teases and bumps, opens, rejoins, all these little extra packages. I didn't have that. So we put it together. It went right to the wire. I told them that we had to roll in a piece of B-roll to cover a cut. And I gave them the countdown. I did it. We rehearsed it. And they got it wrong. And the producer of the show who runs the Yes Network, so you have to guess on your own, folks. He gave me the 9th degree, but I was like, I told you. I mean, what are you supposed to do? So it's not all perfect in live television. And we've had bad nights on live television, transferring from Fox NFL Sunday to playoff baseball and all that. And we had some really bad shows because we didn't have a chance to rehearse. So there's a lot of those things that go on in our business that aren't perfect. And that leave you with this go back to SportsCenter days 30 years ago when I'm a PA running a highlight edit with a shot sheet that the talent hasn't read. And you got to make sure those are the right, the boxes are right. It's the situation, action, result. And you got to make sure it's like double check, right? You might be writing in scribble, but you got to make sure because it's the first time they're seeing it. So it wasn't perfect back then either. So that is kind of like the way it is in sports TV, live sports TV.
How do you dote, or how long do you dote on something like that where you know that you wish it was better off executed without obsessing over it and then realizing that like we're going to have another broadcast year coming up. So like how much space do you allow yourself to think back on that without it haunting you or affecting you moving forward?
I think it really depends on your leadership in your group. Some nights at the Sports Center days, talent, and they still do it. It wasn't like talent's over here and production's over here. 22-year-olds are cutting highlights for the Super Bowl, for the Final Four, for the biggest events in sports television. This is back then. They're going to make mistakes. The beauty of it was that we had postmortems. So there'll be times where, depending on the talent, some talent would get after you, and some would pull you aside and say, "Hey, next time, this is what I want. Less here on the situation, less on the action. Just make sure the score is right, the time is right." And in that interaction, Dan Patrick, Oberman, Bob Lee, all of them were great. There was a couple of them who you don't know, who you don't remember because they were not any good, even though they were at Sports Center. But the majority of them that you remember, the very best of who you remember at ESPN, in all these places, they pull you aside. Some put an arm around you, some don't, and just say, "This is how I want to do it." Pat you on the back, say, "We'll get them tomorrow," because it's another show. Sports Center doesn't end. It's back then it was 3 a day. It was they actually didn't even have morning. They had 6 o'clock, 11, and 2:30 in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's the way it is. But I think what I mean by leadership is those, whether it's talent, whether it's your bosses, whether it's your coordinating producers, they have to set the tone. And it was important for me when I got into those positions that I'm not going to throw chairs. I'm going to say, "We'll talk about it afterwards. Move on." Okay, move on. We got 2 more sections to do, 3 more sections to do. It doesn't help the control room. It doesn't help. The people know they made the mistake. Those guys and gals know they made the mistake. Bad font, bad graphic, bad cut, bad tape. We went off the air. Things happen. When I was doing the Bundesliga at Fox, we're on the air at 6 a.m. Pacific time on the weekends. I got in. For some reason, they were doing some sort of technical update on the engineering side. Didn't tell anybody that, "Oh, by the way, at 6 o'clock, we're on the air." We had nothing. We had no prompter. We had no cameras. We had nothing. So I have to make calls and just, you let your executives know. Then you tell the folks in TOC, the Technical Operations Center, "Hey, have a show ready to go. We may not make it at 6. Then you calm it down, you bring it down, you bring the temperature down. And I say, "Okay, let's all the scripts for talent for our host, print them out. Have her make sure she has them. Let's rehearse that way with them." Okay. So in case the prompter doesn't come back, well, everything did come back eventually, but we got through it because we're all calm. We weren't pointing fingers. We clearly, everyone did their job. We went Bill Belichick, right? Do your job. And we got lucky. But not all the time we were lucky. We've had some issues. So it really depends on leadership. And that goes from every level. You could be an AP with a PA. You could be a producer and the director in your control room. You're the leaders. It's your tempo, your temperament kind of controls everything else. It could be chaos in the control room, but never let your talent know that. And they know. Oh, they know. Talent knows. But I've been pulled aside many times by talent goes, "Hey, I think it was kind of chaotic back there, but we were cool. We were good. We were okay on our end." Good, because they represent us.
Yes.
Because they're the voice. They're the pictures. They're the front line for your event and your show. So that really is important too.
In your experiences with Dan Patrick, how has he been the front line for classiness and just his ability to demonstrate professionalism in the business in your interactions with him?
I will say with him, with Bob Lee, Robin Roberts, Charlie Steiner, KO. It was never, it's about us. Granted, they're the faces again. They're on the line. They treated you like you're a very important part of the team. You see that with his radio show every day. Those guys, production people, bookers, he treats them the same level. He has expectations for himself. He wants that expectation. He expects the best out of his guys and they deliver. And that's how we looked at it. It was never, again, they're not all like that. I mean, they're not. But I will say, Chris Berman, same thing, treated everybody the same. The biggest boss to the PA. Same, all those guys, they do the imitations of Boom and all that. But Boom was Boom. Boom treated everybody fairly and the same. And that's beautiful. When you have that, and it gets gnarly at times. There's no question. But everyone's we're in the same team, we're in the same boat, we're all rowing the same way, and it works out. And it does work out. But Dan has, like the guys I mentioned, great comportment. He just, everyone's a part of the team. And that was so important. And that's why it comes across on the air. He doesn't talk down to people. He doesn't talk down, he never talked down to his audience when he wrote his scripts on SportsCenter. He doesn't talk down to his radio audience. We're together. We're one. We're as one. And that's why they are the most successful are like that. And I would say, I mean, I've dealt with a bunch of them at all the networks, and they're mainly like that. Most of them they're just like that. And that is really important to their success.
When you see someone that has a big ego in this business, how do you work with that person?
I think it's communication. It's making sure that you kind of get an understanding of them. Who are they? They're not just anchor boy or anchor gal. They're a human. And like, who do you like? What do you like? What teams do you like? Banter, communication. By treating them like, there's a lot of people with reputations. Okay. But if you are competent, if you're prepared, if you have your stuff in line, they know you're not messing around. Like, KO and I had a really great relationship. And he came over to Fox. There was a reputation that followed him, but he knew because we worked together at ESPN, we're not, there's no messing around. And he delivered. Man, could he deliver scripts? And if there was something I needed, I knock on the door. He was always available, always open. Hey, I've got this idea about, I see this line in the script. I'm thinking about this. He goes, hey, I got something. Here's a great example. He did an essay that included this Yankee named Jack Chesbro. He played for the Yankees back, I think, in the 19-teens, I believe. It might have still been the Highlanders back then. And I'm going through MLB. I'm calling MLB, their archives. Can't find anything. I said, I wrote a note to KO the night before. I said, KO, I don't have this. I just don't have it. I spent the whole week. He goes, I'll see you in the morning. That's it. That's the email he left me. Walks in the door, super early. We're on at 10, so he probably came in about 7. Knocked on the door, came in the edit bay, handed me a Jack Chesbro card in a glass. He goes, don't lose it. Just walked out. There's Jack Chesbro. We shot it. Obviously, we could shoot it, put it in a paint box, maybe, and we did it. There's Jack Chesbro. Who knows how much that card's worth today? 50,000, 100, who knows? He is a mad collector. So he had those things. He did this amazing Catfish Hunter Obit when he passed away of ALS. I think I'm pretty sure he had ALS. Wrote this beautiful script, walks in on a Friday afternoon, knocks on the door, says, "You're gonna need this." So it gives me a cassette tape. So this is even the mid-90s, late 90s. Cassette tapes are like, ooh, cassette tapes. It was an interview that he had that he wanted me to use of him and Catfish when he was a Yankee and he was a Cub reporter at, maybe he was at Channel 5, Metro Media 5 in New York. I don't remember what he was doing. He might have been in high school, who knows? But he had that and he gave it to me. And we used that. But so those are the examples that the perception ain't the reality a lot of times. It's if you have confidence in who you are and what you do, and you show that confidence and that competency, all those barriers go down. Friendly face, smile, crack jokes, talk ball, whatever, breaks it down. And that's really important. That's important for me with, how I've worked with the groups I've run. That I remember one of the guys there are a couple of guys at the NFL Network. They were scared out of their wits at me way back when. I go, why? I'm like, teddy bear. They just were scared. But we broke it. He goes, but we broke it down because we talked ball. Or I have a cynical way about me. And we kind of broke the ice there. But it's like, for younger people, they get intimidated in this business. And they shouldn't be. If the leadership is good, I always said to the younger folks, the door is open. You got a question? You've got something you're just stuck on. You're cutting a package. You're doing an open. You're doing a rip of highlights. You're doing a small home cooked piece for a show, and you're stuck. Reach out. Sometimes I just would go up there and just check them out. Like, what's going on? How are we doing? Can I see something? And that breaks it down. It's like, I'm invested in you, and you're invested. Obviously, they're invested, but it shows that you're invested. And I am invested. I do care what they put on the air. I do care. It's not like they get an assignment, you're in charge, and you give them that space, but you're also there because you care and you want to give them a pointer or two. And you say, not in a negative way. It's like, hey, maybe you want to move this guy over here, or why did you decide you decided to make that choice on that edit? Why did you use that piece of music or that effect? And you're there to help them, and they appreciate it. And that's what it is. It's our business. We're covering teams generally outside of individual events like golf or tennis, track and field, whatever. But what we do is teamwork. It's the ultimate team. We're the ultimate team in sports television. And if one part of the team has an issue, it kind of affects everybody else. So that's why people don't realize how many people and how many parts of this thing need to go to make it really successful.
Jason Wormser is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. While you were at Fox, Jason, how big of a team player was Scott Ackerson and the impact that he's had on your life and your career?
Well, Scott and I go back 32, 33 years. So he was a CP. I think he was a producer at the time when I got there. And he was a very good producer, obviously. Really, really good. Just had a great sense of where things belong in a rundown. And great comportment, the same cracking jokes, great knowledge, serious when he needed to be serious, but try to keep it light, had great expectations for everybody. And we had a great relationship. And I remember the night he left, they threw him out of the building. I'm at my desk. I think it was prepping for football because it was late. I think he didn't go to them. Was it June or July of '94? It was late when Fox Sports got going and decided to bring him in. And I remember it's like he's wearing a fish tie because he was the CP that night. So because he hated wearing a tie, he used to wear fish ties. it was a fish. And it was like, we knew he was taking, I knew he was taking the job. He told the bosses, and they basically, you got 15 minutes to get out. And it was like, hey, Worm, I'll see you. That was it. He was out. But we stayed in touch. And I went to Dallas to work for ESPN's. I was the first bureau producer in Dallas. Jeremy Schaap was down there for a bit after me. And Leah Siegel, the late, his late producer, a lovely lady who unfortunately passed away. And it was good times in Dallas. I just love Dallas. I love working there. And I worked with everybody. But he would come in from time to time because the Cowboys were really good in the mid-90s. So NFC Championship week, he came in, we had dinner. And I think it was in 90, was the NFC Championship game in 90, or playoff game in 96. And he said, let's stay in touch. And like a couple of weeks later, he calls me up and he says, hey, we just got the baseball contract. We need feature producers. You should come. We got our first Super Bowl that fall. You got to come. And I gave ESPN an opportunity to tell him. I told him I had to go. You have to go. You're working on a network level back then. And even though ESPN was still at a tight in terms of sports center, they didn't own the rights like Fox did to have these major events. Like, you're now the rights holder. You get the opportunity to do all these great things. And he brought me in. And I was forever grateful for him for doing that. And I really hope, I believe I was worth the investment. We did a lot of good things. And I'm really proud of a lot of the things I did there. And, working on that first Super Bowl in New Orleans in 96, the Patriots and the Packers, was just thrilling, really thrilling. And we did a lot of great things together. And he was a legend. He's just had a great way of handling those egos, but those are really good guys. JB and Terry and Howie and Jimmy, Ronnie at that time as well. Just handled it beautifully and could bounce things off them. Look, we were close. We were constant contact. We have an email, a text chain that we're on almost every day, writing some sort of funny thing back and forth with each other about the nonsense that is the sporting world today. So he's been a great impact and a great friend over the years too. And I can't, when I moved from California and left California a couple of years at the end of 2019, the Boxing Day, to move back east, the first stop I was to see him and his wife in Palm Desert. We played golf and celebrated and drank some good wine.
He talks up a pretty good golf game. I think he's got.
Oh, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, he's close to a
good.
scratch golfer. How close are you to that level?
I know. I'm a 10. I'm like a mid 10, 10.5 or whatever. I'm okay. There's times I'm all right. And I get a chance to play here in our lovely spot here in North Carolina. We get a course here, then that's really nice. But mountain golf is different than the wide open the flatlands of Los Angeles playing there. Different. Much different than Rancho Park.
Much different than Rancho Park. When you shoot like an 85, it's like you're shooting a 75 at some other flat courses. So,
maybe
a little bit.
Maybe it's been fun. I've never really gotten that good. I think at the time when I was in Dallas as a bureau producer, because you at Fox at ESPN, you're contracted to work 210 days a year. And if you worked anything more, they had to pay you 1/210th of your salary. I didn't want to do that, even though they were paying me very little. So I had a lot of time off after the Cowboys were done. I literally had a month off, and I got good. I got that handicap down because in Dallas you can play in the wintertime. But I've never been really that good. Just a regular player.
Now, I don't know how much you can play golf in Seattle in the wintertime, but I saw this tweet that you had when referencing Kenny Mayne and your first experiences with Kenny before ESPN.
No doubt.
Take us back to those days.
Kenny was a freelancer. I think he was I forgot what station he was. He was on the station. He was freelancing, and he kept pushing stuff. And he was kind of like my Northwest correspondent. because whenever I needed something for a feature, I'd reach out. So I used to work on the Sunday morning Sports Center, which was which is still the same feel, but it's not as, because it was sports reporters and it's very, very slower paced, more conversational, more introspective. It was just a different feel on Sunday morning. And in the off season of college football, I would work. So in the spring, winter, spring, I'd work on that. And they asked me we were kicking around ideas, and this was hi to Jordan. And Jordan like shaved his head at that point. So he did a piece on bald athletes. And it was just a fun piece. And I was thinking about, I was thinking about like, Slick Watts. Oh yeah, I gotta have the Slick Watts from the Supersonics. And I think I did research. I found that Otis Sistrunk, defensive lineman for the Raiders, lived in Seattle. So I phoned him up and I said, Kenny, hey, can you go get, I think I found both of them, but I think he finalized it. And then he did the interview and I said, this is kind of the idea of the piece and where we're going. I said, be you, just go, be hilarious. And it was unbelievably hilarious. And it made the piece. And it was a farce. The piece was a farce, but right up his alley. And I knew right then and there, I said, we got to get you in. We got to get you in here. And it wasn't much longer after that. I know I sent some notes to some people, maybe to Walsh and some others, Norby Williamson, and other producers, Steve Anderson, executives like that. I said, God, go bring him, like you should look at his tape. And they hired him. And he's been, what a run. What a great run. So irreverent, so funny, so quick. That's the thing about him. He is fast. He is just, his brain is going super fast and he's super hilarious. And I love the way he ended it. I've heard him on some of the podcasts with Levertard and of course the last night on Sports Center with Aaron Rodgers, and just, he's really good. And he's going to do whatever he wants to do. My guess is he'll go to Levertard and he'll do some funny, like Main Street, or call it Main Street or something like that, Main Street USA, and some wacky, crazy, old school stuff. That's where I think he's just great.
Kenny Mayne's not going to have any lack of opportunities thrown his way, given his talent, given how quick-witted he is.
Yeah, no question.
Given how quick he is on his feet. And like you said, something could be said, and off script, he just thinks of a zinger. And it's just what he does. That's what makes him so good. What's a story? I know you and Michael Del Tufo go way back, probably from your Fox days. Do you have a funny story about Mike as he was making his way through the business that you recall, something from your earlier experiences with him?
Not necessarily funny. I know that because he was with there was he and Richie Becker and a whole bunch of the other guys were mixing the Fox NFL Sunday show along with doing the highlights, the cut-ins and all that. And I know those guys really well because there was this thing called sweetening, which they still do. Back again, these are things I never did at ESPN. When I got to Fox, it's like, yes, we sweeten our pieces. I go, what is that? So your piece is not really done until it goes into audio mixing, which is called sweetening. And there's effects, and they level out all the sound. They take out things that don't work. They add crowd, they add cracks of bats, natural, those types of sounds into the piece. It's like, it's not done. It was like, I was like, whoa, just incredible what it was like once Richie and those guys got it done on the back end. Just Del Tufo was just this, he's Jersey. And you're from Jersey, you're different. I was born in New Jersey, but I don't claim I'm from New Jersey because my family moved to Florida when I was 4. But I have a little Jersey in me, but I don't have a lot of, but there's a Jersey in people and it, and he's got it. I don't have anything off the top of my head. I do know, like, when there was things that were going down and weren't going well, Del Tufo. There was a lot of that. A lot of Del Tufo. Potting up the wrong mic or not potting up the right mic. But that's live TV. That's live TV. That's the way it goes on live TV.
I love how he got the in with the NFL cheerleaders. Was it in Texas? Was the Houston Texans?
Where, yes.
Yeah. He was putting on the dance routines.
Yes.
And I also, and you pointed this out, and I encourage everybody to check out your interview with Mike on Wormcast, where he was discussing, and you brought this up about how on Friday nights he does this whole dance club scene, disco scene, DJ.
Yes, it's amazing. It's on the Twitter. He does it live on the Twitter at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. And it's like 80s danceteria, 80s dance. And the first like 4 hours of it is like more modern dance stuff. I don't really care. But late at night, it gets old school. And that's where I'm in. So old school 70s R&B. And it's really cool. And he's got this incredible setup. I mean, he is a DJ. It is not like he's pressing a button on Spotify. He's got the mixer, he's got the turntables, he's pressing buttons. There's stuff going on. A lot of UV, a lot of audio meters going back and forth. There's a lot going on. It's a great show. And he's got great passion for it. And like anything, if you got great passion for something, you're gonna be good at it. He's really good at it.
Final question. Jason Wormser is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. Speaking of the 70s, speaking of old school, 1976, the Tampa Bay Rowdies against the San Antonio Thunder. Yes. Your first professional soccer game you attended.
Yes.
You posted a worn out ticket from that experience.
No, that was the program.
Oh, that was the program. Yeah. Wow.
Kick magazine, blue Kick magazine.
How did that experience as a kid growing up inspire what you've done in soccer broadcasting eventually? The role it played.
10 years. I'm like 10 at that time. I'm not even 10. I was 9. Yeah, I played poorly as a youth. Moved to South Florida, and the Strikers started in '77. And they had Gerd Mueller, and George Best, Nanny Cabillas. We're talking about some of the greatest players ever on that team. Ray Hudson, who's now, from beIN Sports and Sirius XM. Arnie Mauser, Jan von Beveren. These guys were I grew up in South Florida. The Dolphins, Hurricanes almost went out of business. They almost stopped playing football after the '78 season. We almost got the Buffalo Braves. That didn't happen. So we only had spring training, Yankees in Fort Lauderdale. We had the Orioles in Miami. The Texas Rangers and the Cubs were in Pompano Beach for a little bit. The Expos and Braves were in West Palm Beach. That was it. And the Strikers. That's all we had. And so they were my team. They were my baseball team, even though we had the greatest radio station in America. And everyone says KMOX was. The answer is no. Greatest radio station in America was WIOD, 610 WIOD in Miami, where every night there was a different game on. Hank Goldberg, who was years on ESPN, hosted a show, a sports talk show, usually late afternoon, early evening, and there was a game on. The Yankees were on. They had Orioles rights, Braves rights. Sometimes we'd heard on a Friday night, we'd hear Vince Scully, the Dodger game. We had Hawks radio, the Washington Bullets games. We had Knick games. Johnny Most would be on. They just had this amalgamation every night. Notre Dame basketball, Mutual basketball and football. I remember listening to the Duke North Carolina game on Mutual through the station. It was that famous. It was like 22-21 because Dean Smith went 4 corners at the very beginning. It was dreadful, like 1980, 81. Anyway, that was my sports team, and so that love never really changed. That never went anywhere, and it went a little bit when I was in college in the mid 80s because NASL went away. And you never got outside of the World Cup. There was no soccer, but I always kind of stayed in touch through Star Soccer on PBS. I go back to Soccer Made in Germany back in the late 70s. Star Soccer, which had a 1-hour English Division I show back then. Mario Machado was this great voice. I think he was an anchor in Los Angeles, on the news anchor in Los Angeles. And he was the voice of the highlights back then. And that's why I became a Spurs fan, because they bought Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa after the World Cup brought them. They were the first South Americans to play in England, and they were amazing. And the team had a chicken on their badge. I didn't know what it was. It looked like a chicken. So the little chicken was right there. It's a cockerel, as I later found out. But I'm 11 or 12 years old, maybe a little bit older than that, but 13 years old. And I liked it. I just liked it. And I kind of just stuck with it. I remember two things that really changed for me. I was like supervisor at ESPN, and I always, like Bob Lee and I always would talk soccer, because Bob, he was the public address announcer at Giant Stadium for the Cosmos, and loved soccer. And we talked soccer all the time. And this was, we didn't have the 90 World Cup. Turner had the 90 World Cup, but I think we had the World Cup qualifier in '89. And was I just there? Anyway, that Bob, we would just talk all the time. And I remember the 92 European Championship. I'm a highlights supervisor in SportsCenter. It's a slow mid-July week, Sunday. And he had the big shows on, but Denmark were on the beach, literally on the beach, were called in to come in to the tournament because Yugoslavia was thrown out because of the Falklands War. Thrown out. They had a great team, but they were on the beach. They didn't qualify. They get into the tournament and win the tournament. One of the great upsets of all time. And I'm sitting there going, this is an amazing story. And I sold it. I sold it to Mike McQuaid, and he gave me 30 seconds. All right, 30-second highlight. And we got it on, but that just kind of really got the ball rolling again. And then we had the World Cup. I went to the World Cup. I wasn't a part of the World Cup broadcast back then. I was a high soup, and had other responsibilities. But I watched that. I went to a bunch of games and went to the final, went to the games in Foxborough, and it never left me. And the second thing and that's never changed. When I went to Fox the first time, when I went to the NFL Network, I always would stay in touch. Bill Graff, Tim Scanlon, all those guys. We stayed in touch. Bob Lee. And once in a while, I'd send them a note about soccer. Then they started getting more interested. Mid-2000s, really interested. And I would send them notes. And there was just like, why are you not hiring Martin Tyler to call your games in the summertime? Why are you not hiring John Champion? When we've got guys doing baseball calling soccer, and to their credit, they did the very best they could, and they did actually a pretty good job. But they weren't. That wasn't their main thing. And soccer has so much nuance to it. There's so many players from around the world. You have to have some sort of industrial knowledge, for lack of a better term, for that sport, like any sport. And they heeded my warning. They heeded my emails, not warning, but my emails. And they hired those guys in 2008. And I always stayed in touch with those guys. And in 2009, the great Jeff Mason, who is a legend in our business, longtime producer, director at ABC, NBC, he was a consigliere of ours at the NFL. And we became very close. And he did his business with us, and then ESPN went, I think he had a contract with ESPN, went back to them. And he was kind of the conduit for ESPN with FIFA and on high level. Calls me out of the blue 2009. and says, "Hey, we talked to your bosses. We want to hire you for the World Cup." I go, "What? I have a job." And so he talked to Steve Bornstein. Steve Bornstein ran ESPN, ran ABC, was president of ESPN before George Bodenheimer, became the CEO of NFL Network. Apparently he went to them. I didn't solicit it. He went to them. And he went to Eric Weinberger, who hired me, who was executive producer. I mean, completely out of the blue. And I get off the phone with him. He goes, "We want to hire you." And it's done. Just say yes. 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 And I walked out of my office and I went down, and they were all in Eric Weinberger's office. And they just clapped. And I go, "Why did you do that?" Because you love it. You love doing it, and you'd be great with them. And it means a lot about me. It says a lot about us and who we are at NFL Network and what we do and what we produce. And that was a great experience going to South Africa and working the World Cup. I did the first 2 rounds, and then they said, "We're cool." Great. I had tickets, so I could go to a lot of games, and it was an amazing experience. And to be a CP with them and work with a different group that I haven't worked with in a long time, and then some who are old friends, and having the opportunity to work with Bob Lee, Chris Fowler, and Mike Tirico. They were the hosts, the rotating hosts. What a joy. What a joy it was to work with them. And Roberto Martinez, Jurgen Klinsmann was in there for a little bit, and Alexi Lawless, and it was great. And then a couple months later, I got a call from a headhunter at Fox saying, "Hey, we heard it went all right in soccer, and went all right in South Africa, and we had this opportunity. What do you think?" So that's how it went. It's just I can't explain it. I can't explain it. Like anybody has it's like, I think all sports fans have a niche, a second thing that they love, whether they were a runner, whether they play tennis, or golf. They were in jiu-jitsu, they were in the martial arts, and they love UFC because they participated in it. Soccer was that for me, and I know it, and I know it well. There are others that know more, but there are a few that have more passion about it than me, and I took it seriously, and I really fought for soccer at Fox. And when Fox Soccer became FS1, you had to fight harder because it was just a lot of moving parts. They were getting so much different content. UFC, and then they got the Big East, and then the Big Ten, and then soccer kind of like falls over here. So you got to fight, and you got to show up and do your best work all the time. They were respectful at Fox about that. And they knew that we were going to go and give them the best we could.
Jason, you raised the bar of soccer coverage at Fox. When I listened to you talk about those names that you mentioned, as far as those you worked with in the World Cup and the joy you had in working with them, I feel like if I had any one of them on, they would say the same thing about you and the joy that it was working with you. And when I think about your career in soccer, I think you're David Beckham without hair, as far as the passion is concerned. I think that you mirror David.
I'm entirely more handsome.
Yes.
David Beckham bald. How do you think David Beckham would look bald? Probably still handsome. Probably still handsome.
Not as, I think you've got him there, because some people can pull it off really well and some can't. And I don't think that David Beckham could do that. Jason Wormser, check out his podcast, The Wormcast. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. It's all in on sports media. He has some really high profile guests.
We got some good ones coming up. I've got some great ones, and I got some authors coming up, and I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully in the next week. Can't announce it right now, but 2 excellent writers that are coming. And I got a lot of people I want to get. It's hard, as you know, Bryan, to get people. It's not easy to get people.
When you're Jason Wormser, though,
it's not easy.
A little bit
Trust
easier.
Me. You'd think, but I've been trying to get some people on to talk about the U.S. Open golf. and kind of how golf coverage has changed since the pandemic. And it's been a challenge, but yeah, you got to put it out. You got to work very, very hard to be creative and not to have to go down the same silo each week and try to mix it up. So, but it's been fun. Yeah, you could see that on the podcast. The podcast is on the Apple and on the Spotify and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. From a man who, while you were 10 years old, had his first professional soccer match, taking that in, to see the career that you've engineered. It is very inspiring to see what you've done, not just in soccer. Oh, go for it.
Bob Barker is my inspiration. Bob, I missed one day of school, K through 12. One day. I missed one day. I was 6. It was 1974. Watergate hearings. I was enamored. I was just fascinated by the whole Sam Ervin. There was a guy, there was an older gentleman that was friends with my parents who looked exactly like Sam Ervin. And I wanted to watch. I love The Price is Right. I can't explain it. I missed one day. I had a cold or something. I'm out. Bob Barker. I wanted to be Bob Barker. And he and Roy Leap, the weatherman at WTVT, Channel 13 in Tampa, those are the two guys who inspired me. I can't explain why, but that's it. When I was that young.
You talk about The Price is Right. Your impact on the business is priceless. James Wormser, thank you so much. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So grateful to have you and chat with you.
Thank you for your time, Bryan. It was great. It was a lot of fun.